Singaporeans' losses from scams down by 40% compared to last year, and that is thanks to enhanced measures. One of them, a new anti-scam hotline that has received more than 6,000 calls in just 3 weeks. Let's get deeper into this topic with Mr. Steve Lam. He's ASEAN Cybersecurity Leader at EY. Thanks so much for coming in this evening to join us, Mr. Lam.
Thanks for having me, Rachel.
Now, you were not on, but earlier in the first half of this bulletin, we're looking at how scammers get to their victims. So it's social media platforms, apps. Telegram was highlighted as particularly used as a channel for scammers. How do they use these platforms? Give me a typical case.
Well, social media platforms and messaging platforms are where people are spending time on when they are online these days, right? And that's where they spend majority of the time. And hence it makes sense for scammers to be there. Scammers operate like commercial business, like small businesses, and they buy ads, they attempt to form connections with users, and they sell products online, so on and so forth, right? So their behavior, I would say, is not very different from what you would do if you were a legitimate business user. You get out there, you try to outreach to as much people as you can, get them to know about your products, get them interested, get them to connect with you.
So it's not the apps or the platforms in themselves that are a problem. It's the intentions that drive these messages on these apps. And I suppose on the other side of it, consumers like myself who frequently fall victim because we're not too bright when it comes to deciphering the message when we get them on apps. For you, which is the bigger problem? Solving that problem on that end, or educating the public enough so that we do not fall victim as frequently as we do?
Right. Great question, Wei Shu. So I think, this is multifaceted and the solution is also multi-layered, right? So it's, I wouldn't say that only the smart people don't fall prey to scams, right? Because that is not true as well. Very smart people do fall prey to scams because the very nature of the scam is to appeal to human nature, right? Everyone loves to have a good bargain, and everyone loves to be able to purchase something at a lower value than market price. People like to connect with other people and form that love connection. They are looking for love online, so on and so forth. So, it's not exactly about intelligence.
Okay. A rule of thumb, if something is too good to be true, likely it's a scam. Would you say that?
Yes, absolutely. Okay. However, just because something is worth $1,000 and you purchase it at $1,000 doesn't mean it's not a scam either.
True. Yeah, you can second guess your victims, right?
Yeah,
okay,
absolutely.
So this anti-scam hotline, which has received 6,000 calls in 3 weeks, and therefore, and it has helped reduce scam cases significantly in Singapore. Right. Why does it work? See, when it happens, so we call them. And then what happens after? How does this hotline work?
I think it's a giant step forward in combating scam in Singapore. So if you think about it, the 1799 hotline has 3 functions, right? So the first function is to allow someone, after they have been a victim of a scam, to call this hotline and actually report that scam. Now, before the 1799 hotline and before the Scam Shield app existed, when you have been scammed, you had to put on, your outside clothes. You have to Google where your nearest police post is. You got to go down, get in line, do a police report, get a statement, stuff like that. So it's going to take you like 2 hours, right? Now you can just go on to 1799.
What do they do when you call them?
So once you do that, it then goes into a database. They do their investigations. There's also a scam center that sits behind it that coordinates several activities. One of it, which is attempt to protect the monies that have been lost, right? And that's where the second function of 1799 is, which is if you have received a message and you're not really sure whether it's a scam or not, right? And that's where you can use the second function and say, I've just received this unsolicited message. Is this a scam? Now, the third function is where it is actually quite genius. The third function allows you, even when you are not a victim of a scam, right? So someone tried to scam you, right? And previously, all this information just goes into the ether because you don't actually make a police report unless you have lost some money. But the third function of 1799 allows you to actually call them and say, look, someone has tried to scam me, or I'm going to report them for that. And this data is then, it goes into the back end and it's used to correlate with the actual scam incidents. And, based on this, they're able to build up a pretty good database
So in
advise.
fact, the bringing down of scam cases that we're seeing now, that could get exponentially much higher because the database will increase and therefore chances of preempting and tracking will improve with this larger database.
Yeah, not just that, but it's about reaction time, right? Combating scams, one very important factor, in fact, the most important factor about being able to recover the monies is about the response time. The faster you're able to react, the better your chances of getting back the scam monies.
Now, you're on ASEAN, you're the ASEAN cybersecurity leader at EY.
Right.
And I think we keep saying this, and it doesn't mean it's any less true, but what happens, crimes like these do not respect borders.
Absolutely.
Regional, sovereign borders. These things can take, and they're harder to track, I take it, if it's, say, happening in another country, say within ASEAN, but not in Singapore. How do you coordinate your efforts with other countries that may have very different regulations, very different expectations of what constitutes safety in their country? How do you work with them?
Well, within EY, we have this entire network of firms, and we do communicate with each other very regularly and update each other on the latest trends when it comes to scams and cybersecurity issues. And what we call the TTPs, the techniques and procedures, are then shared across the entire firm at the country level. And you're absolutely right. So things like scams, once it goes transnational, it then becomes exponentially harder, not just to track, but also to enforce, right? Because you do want to bring these criminals to justice, and when it crosses borders, then there are a lot more complications with that, and also to retrieve kind of the monies that have been scammed, it also becomes a lot more complicated when it crosses the borders. So having kind of that transnational network at the country level, and also within the private enterprises, helps a lot, definitely, in making sure that the response time is quick and we are able to facilitate not just the recovery of monies, but also the enforcement of action.
Well, thanks so much for coming us this evening. As Steve Lam explaining, making a difficult issue really much more easy to understand. Thank you.
Thank you.
Steve Lam, ASEAN cybersecurity leader at EY.